All right, it is 6:15. I'm going to call us to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, we have all 5 board members present this evening for attendance, and we need to adopt the meeting agenda. I'm going to propose one alteration. We don't have committee reports this evening, so our committee updates, sorry. So I'm going to ask if there's a motion to adopt the meeting agenda, striking item 10, committee updates.
I move we strike that item that you just said.
And adopt the agenda.
And adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Diana. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Meredith. All those in favor? Aye. Great. We have no presentations. We do have one public comment this evening. So just a reminder, you will have 3 minutes, and Nikki will keep time for you, and the board will not respond to public comments, but if there's a follow-up necessary, then we will follow up at another time. So we have David Wallace. You can just, I don't know if the mic's on or not, but.
Hello, my name is David Wallace. My son is Waylon Wallace. He goes to the middle school. I just spoke to Justin here, and my concern was that that Sharon Thwing has left her position as counselor at the middle school, who my son has been seeing all the way up until Tuesday. And I just found out the position hadn't been filled. I had looked at the contracts at the end of this and did not see a person filling that contract, and with the mental aspect of today's students, it was a concern. So Justin filled me in about the new contract, and my concerns are assuaged. So thanks.
Thank you for being here. Thank you, David. Oh, it's really loud. I know it has to be, right? All right. Great, thank you. So that is all for public comment. So we're going to be moving into our budget hearing, which is, I have something to read because this is formal. Do I read it now? Sorry. Okay, thank you. So there will be a public comment opportunity in tonight's meeting for the public hearing on the budget. Those interested in speaking were able to sign up prior to the meeting on the public comment sign-up sheet form. So the board, so before we do the actual public comment though, Mike's going to give us some presentations. So I'll turn it over to you, Mike.
All right, thank you. And we're off. I am going to cover our 24-25 agenda here. Budget summary report for 24-25. The F-195, which is the state's budget for the next fiscal year, 24-25. The F-203 a little bit, which is the revenue, again, state form revenue generation type of thing from the state funds that we get. And the F-195F, which is a 4-year budget report. So, and in the F-195, I'm going to discuss enrollment revenues and expenditures for those. I always like to remind everybody we have different funds that we run a school district from. And the general fund is the one we really run a school district with. That's where we spend all of our expenditures, really, is the general fund. The capital projects one, we do have a technology and capital levy, and revenues go into that fund, and we use it to buy technology equipment and improvements to our buildings and grounds. Debt service fund, I can only pay for long-term debt, such as voted or non-voted bonds. So built a new high school here, we're going to pay for those bonds over the years. And we collect the local taxes in that to pay those. ASB, run and led by students. It's the Associated Student Body Fund. And I'm over my time, sorry. And the Transportation Vehicle Fund, I can only buy buses. They have to be big yellow vehicles with all the pedals and signs and everything. I cannot buy cars or anything else from it, just buses. So all of the funds, we are looking to start the year with what I estimated we were going to end with approximately about 626,000. We have $50.5 million worth of revenues and expenditures, and end with about the same balance. I know this isn't what we were looking for. We were looking to increase it just over $300,000, and there were some unexpected expenditures that popped up after we had done all of our planning and things like this that I felt I needed to add to the expenditures and put in here. In transportation, we're going to receive some revenue, and I always budget to get the money that the state gives us on a depreciation for buses, and I plan to buy a bus from the money that the state gives us. I also plan for an extra bus, just in case something goes wrong and one of our buses becomes unusable and we receive insurance money for it, I can buy a replacement bus. So I've budgeted to buy 2 buses in there, really. In capital projects, I plan to receive our levy proceeds and state match, and I'll say state proceeds and some energy proceeds. Again, we plan to apply for grants. We applied for some last year, didn't get any, but guess what? We got one this next year. We have a $500,000 energy grant we're getting from the Department of Commerce to put in some solar panels. And I'm pretty excited about it. Our match is $11,000, and we're going to get $500,000. So that you know, when we added that to our, we said technology and capital levy, and that money goes in there where we can use in our buildings. We're going to get our good bang for the buck with some of that money. Just having some creates that possibility to get a lot. Debt service fund, again, the only thing I'm doing there is collecting local taxes to pay our bonds. And ASB, this is what the students plan to raise and spend this next year. And that's the totals for the district. I have a document attached to our agenda called the All Funds Summary. And I've got all my funds in there, and it's got summaries of many different things broken out in different ways. A lot of it in the general fund, but I have broken down by like local taxes, non-tax local, state general, state special revenues, things like that, and expenditure side, certificated salaries, classified salaries, things along those lines, right? A very, very summarized sheet that is in there that you can go through and see where we're spending in a very summarized manner. And for the rest of the funds, except for the general fund, this is about all I do. In other words, it's enough information where you can see that I plan to get $202,000 in local non-tax revenue. In other words, maybe some insurance money, and $233,000 from the state. So it's pretty simple, and I'm gonna spend $405,000 on buses. So that's why I feel like the other ones are pretty self-explanatory on what we're doing, but it's not in the general fund because there's so much more to that in running a school district. So, but again, I just mentioned revenues in transportation vehicle fund, 2 buses, 1 just in case. Capital projects, local taxes, state grants, again, facility improvements, equipment, energy improvements, and transfers. We transfer money from capital projects into the general fund for technology-related expenditures that are appropriately expended in the general fund. And then, of course, debt service fund. I'm paying principal and interest. And I also put another $50,000 in there for capacity just in case. Sometimes we might have the opportunity to refinance some bonds at a lower interest rate that will save some community members, you know, our money, our taxpayers some money. And they've even contacted me, and we're not quite there yet where it's worth doing yet because there's a cost to do it. And then, of course, there's the benefit of what we can save. So, but it is being reviewed, I guess you could say, annually, and we're just not there where it could create a savings for us yet. But could happen this next year, and I want to plan for it. And again, ASB budgeted by them. Let's dive into the general fund. As we all know, the number of students we have drives everything. And originally we had done some projections where, you know, we had planned a decline. We had things along those lines, but and I kind of dropped off the 1920 where we had like 2,700 students because it fell off the radar. It's over 5 years ago now. But I put in the last 4 years and this next year projected, and we're pretty close to flat. moving forward. It's up just a little bit more, but due to I'll say some of the secondary levels that kind of hung on to a few things a little better than I anticipated in some areas. Elementary really held on in the grades 1 through 5, a little better than I anticipated. I am a little concerned right now about my kindergarten enrollment for next year. That's always hard to project. And I think our pre-registration enrollments are down a little bit from what they have been, but I also budgeted less than what we actually got this year. So I'm hopeful that we're going to come in close. But that is the one that's got me nervous right now. The rest of the grades I don't have a huge concern about. I have fewer registrations in some other grades, but I may have fewer students leaving as well. There may be just with fewer people turning over homes, people are staying a little more, I think, than they were before, and therefore, students are not going to be as many aren't going to leave and as many aren't coming in. So I think the whole thing may be down. Our in-person enrollment, also an important factor, is also, I think, kind of following that same thing. It was pretty close in the running start last year, and the Open Doors program is so few students, whether it was 6 or 2, that's a huge difference, I get it, but it's not impactful to us one way or the other. So again, in-person enrollment, very close, actually small increase in that one. As a total revenues in our budget, the state general is the majority of the money we're getting. Special grants are the special education, LAP programs, transitional bilingual, federal, state dollars, and the highly capable program and the transportation. Those are all state special revenues coming in. We also have federal special revenues that come in, and there's some federal special revenues for Title I for special education, but the biggest portion of the money we get there really this next year is in food service with our food service program. Otherwise, we do have transfers coming in, like I said, from the capital projects to general fund. Our local tax is about 15% of the total revenues we get for next year. These numbers didn't change a lot. Here we have the expenditures next year. We're still around 86.1% of our total expenditures being staff and 13.9 in the MSOCs. This also didn't change much. You know, I believe our staff went down very little on this, and it was up to 88%, I believe, just a couple of years ago or so, and so this has slowly come down. But our MSOCs expenditures are increasing faster than we're getting revenue for. And speaking of the MSOCs, I have a disclosure that I am required to do now. Before we were required to calculate a disclosure and have that information, and previously I did share it before. And what that is from the state, they're allocating us about $3,705,000 in their MSOCs from the state. And in programs 01, which is basic education, 02, which is our alternative learning program, 03, which is Open Doors, and 97, which is the district-wide support, we have to spend at least $3,705,000. Not a problem. Okay. So we exceed it, therefore we're meeting the requirement. The state's concern is that they're giving us money for MSOCs, material supplies and operating costs, and that we're using it for salaries. And unfortunately, they're actually they're not giving us enough money for MSOCs. Changes for 24-25. I think that, you know, like the 23-24 when we created the year, we focused on communicating our reductions pretty well during the year. I think we communicated many times. We had a couple Zoom meetings. We talked about reductions, you know, and so as we know, we have like a district-wide administrator position that we do not have moving forward, right? And there are several other positions that we have reduced and then made adjustments and moved things around. So everything we planned out to do, we did those. So I felt like going into a lot of those details wasn't necessary, since I felt like, at least I believe, we've communicated those reductions fairly well over the year. I'm going to get into some staffing data now, all based on enrollment projections. So this next year, the allocation from the state is 141.87 certificated instructional staff FTE. And in my budget, I actually have 140.58. Actually, I do have another 1 and 2 actually in there that I didn't list as FTE staff because I may not be paying for them in that way. So really I could be overstaffed by 0.71. But the way it shows up in our sheets and the way it would present here is that I'm understaffed by 1.2. Keep in mind, even though I'm understaffed by 1.2, we're still spending almost $2.5 million more than what the state allocates us for those positions on their base contracts only, which means this has a lot to do with the experience level of the staff that we have. And again, I think I mentioned before, what did we get? $400,000 or so, additional because we have experienced staff. It costs a lot more than what we get for that. But it's better than not getting it, which we were not getting it a couple of years ago. Certificated administrative staff. So these are our district office certificated staff and principals certificated staff. And in this case, we used to be budgeted and staffed at right about what the state funded, or the state's prototypical school funding model says you should have this many, and we did reduce by 1. So it really kind of shows up here. Still costs more than what the state allocates for these positions. And the classified staff. This is the one that we know is just so underfunded for paraprofessionals, underallocated from the state for paraprofessionals, things like this. So we definitely staff more than what the state funds because you just have to, just for student safety. And, so our allocation from the state there is 43.86 and our staffing is at 55.79. So we're overstaffed, technically, according to the state's model, by about 12. And really are meeting the bare bones minimum of, I think, what we need to do to serve students in that account, in those accounts. On our budgeted revenues, I just noted here, even though it's in that old summary pages that that you have available to review, I'm just kind of pulling information from that and putting into these slides. So detailed information is in there a little bit better, but our local taxes are going up. That's simply due to the consumer price index, which is a basis on the maximum that we can collect for students and things like this, so we get to collect a little bit more. Our local non-tax, mainly interest and sports-related fees, I dropped that down this next year. I just looked at this year's collections and things along those lines and thought, even though it's up in certain areas, it's down in some other areas, and I adjusted it down about $41,000. I'll say to be a little more conservative on my projections. The state, there's many factors related to this. IPD, our MSOC increase that the state gave us more money for MSOCs, not enough. I think they gave us $100,000 and insurance alone cost us $200,000, and again, our enrollment staying flat is something that contributes to this. Overall, the state general is going up by about $2.2 million. Again, that IPD is probably the majority of this. And then the state special. The state special is really special education. As you were aware of this last year, our enrollment grew in special education, and therefore the allocation for that has increased as well. Our federal general, I project, this year we actually received $4,000 more than I thought we were going to. It's like $25,000 I projected, we're getting 29. So I projected to get the 29 next year. I don't think it'll go down. And that is, a federal general is federal forest revenue, and every school district gets a portion of that. Our federal special grants, That was kind of a change in the special education allocation and how they fund things. It actually happened this year, but so I probably over budgeted in the federal side this year, but that's okay because we got more on the state side, and they kind of offset each other. As a matter of fact, I've, really, if you net out the difference there, we're up $2 million. Our other agencies, this was, there's a decrease in the county allocation and a little increase in the ASF grants that I looked at and said, oh, this is here and here, and it was about $8,000, not much. My other financing sources, transfers from technology levy. Even though I had some increase in some expenditures from the technology levy coming over, I had a decrease in some others. So I'll say the others are, historically, we've been paying our leases on all of our computers. And even this last year, there was a lot of lease payments. I have one lease payment left on all of the leases. We had like 9 different leases, and I have one lease payment left on one lease. We're going to be purchasing the computers in the future and buying them from the Capital Projects Fund. Therefore, my net result from all of that ended up being about $43,000 less that we'll be transferring. My expenditure change. Note that I said from the revenue from the state that most of that's going into it's in the implicit price deflator. That shows up right away. The allocation we get from the state is based on the salaries that the state pays, and so they always cost more than what the state allocates. But there's a certificated salary increase, classified salaries, and in the classified ones, we did reduce some positions and also increase some positions. So it's like certificated didn't change much, but the classified actually, I think, increased just a little bit. Even though I decreased some, it went up in special education. And of course, if I'm, when the salaries go up, the employee benefits, taxes and stuff related to that increase. Our supplies and materials costs are increasing. Majority of that I would attribute to insurance and utilities are going up. Then our contractual services, this is mainly in special education. We had an increase in a lot of our contracted services in special education this year due to the increased enrollment, and anticipate that will continue next year. Not much different change in travel, and I didn't plan on spending any capital outlay from the general fund. The rest of the pages, I wasn't going to go through in detail, right? But, I do compare the 22-23 actual to the 23-24 original and the 24-25 budget. And I do this by revenue by fund, expenditures, general fund expenditures by activity. And activity is, things like teaching or library or health or, those types of activity, or technology, business office, or a program. And our programs I've mentioned, basic ed, special education, learning assistance program, those types of programs. So I've created summary reports that are all in the packet that hopefully everybody had some time to look at and review. Then in the 4-year projection, this is where I need to kind of talk about, I think, when I do a 4-year projection, what am I doing when I talk about the next 4 years? Because I left enrollment flat for 24-25, but I didn't want to be too optimistic and think that that's going to continue for the next 3 years. So I continued like I did before, at least, and declined 1% for each of the subsequent years. So in 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28, 1% fewer students each year moving forward. So about 25 fewer students. And I projected the implicit price deflator. We knew that I was going to, I used what I know is kind of coming through, and in the 24-25, I included negotiated costs for unions and things like this. So when I'm budgeting for the salaries and stuff moving forward, these are the factors that I'm using. So I used it also, though, as 2% for each year moving forward, because I know it's not going to be as much as it was around, and I use it for both the top and the bottom. In other words, I use it on the revenues and say, all right, I'm going to get more revenue by about 2%. And I use it for my expenditures. So I'm going to say my teacher cost is going to go up by 2%, right? So those are my projections going forward. So I'm not saying that I'm going to get 2% more, and that's the same dollar amount as the 2% more in expenditures. They're not the same, right? My 2% more in expenditures is greater than the revenues. So I apply those across the board for the next few years. I also said, in order to make this start to work the right direction in 25, 26, I've got to decrease expenditures by another $600,000 in addition to other necessary adjustments we're going to need to do. So I know that we're going to need to make some other adjustments, like the salary is going to cost us more than what we're getting, right? I don't know exactly what that'll be yet, but we know that they're going to give us, I'll say 2%, we're going to pay for 2%, and that's going to cost us. So we'll have to make adjustments for that. But I think it'll be another $600,000 we need to do in 25, 26 in order to start to turn it around and build our fund balance back up. This is the numbers of that moving forward so that you can see, even though in 24, 25, I'm not looking to increase things really at all hardly here, but we've got to start increasing them. There's 25, 26, 26, 27, 27, 28. And I believe these are pretty conservative. For example, I mentioned I decreased a number in there on local revenues, for example, because I wanted to be conservative in what we're doing. I want to make sure that I actually receive more in local revenues than we're receiving. And each year I'm diving a little more deeper into the details of the budget and working on doing a more fine-tuned job, because when we're so tight on budget, I've got to be tight in the projections. And there's only so much time, so there's only so much you can do. Whereas last year we really dove in and I knew exactly the staff we budgeted and where they were budgeted and exactly how much, and I felt like we had that done really well. And this year, I feel really confident in that, those again, but we dove into the things like sick leave cash outs and our substitute costs, right? We really narrowed it down to how many substitute days did we use on average every day during the year, and what are those costs, and what are they, therefore we can use those projections moving forward. So, and when we go into our retreat, I'll probably dive into those in more detail for you, just so you can kind of get an idea of the detail we looked into. And I sat down with the payroll office and stuff, and we gathered a lot of data. So that way we're planning for those things to occur better than we have in the past, I believe. Yeah, from certificated subs, classified subs. We even found a couple of things that are going to look a little funny because I changed the coding in it. Something was paid for out of extra hours, but really it wasn't extra hours. It's a supplemental contract, so for responsibility. So it's a minor shift, but it's enough of one that I want to report it differently, and we're going to budget for it differently moving forward. So, so I really feel this is all very conservatively budgeted going forward, and therefore think that each of these years I should be able to increase the fund balance by more than what we're projecting there, but I don't want to bank on it.
Are we good for questions?
Yes.
Can
And we're down with
I just have a
questions,
quick one on this last. So
Yeah.
does it show on this last table the reduction that needs to be made each year to meet the end of year fund balance?
No.
Okay.
It'll tell you that we're spending $50,495 this year, and next year I'm going to spend $50,369,000, and therefore there's a reduction of $134,000 before we add on, you know, so we got to reduce that and whatever we're going to pay out in salaries,
Okay.
if nothing else, and whatever more we have to pay for insurance. And so whatever increase we have in costs,
That will all
we're
be
going to have to reduce
reductions.
by those increases and 100 and, yeah.
So this is
34,000.
just assuming, this is just not taking into consideration the cuts that need to be made to actually hit these numbers each of these years.
It's there.
It is taking into consideration cuts that have to be made.
But maybe not all of them. Yeah,
Right.
right. Okay,
Right, like, I can't tell you without a doubt what our negotiations and how our contracts are gonna settle this year, this next year. And we're bargaining with all our groups.
okay. Questions?
How early do you have the IPD? Like, what kind of planning?
So now I'm gonna have it earlier than before, because it's supposed to be based on the prior, calendar year now. And before, I wouldn't get it until the legislature was done, right? So now they can kind of, I think in February, kind of tell me what the number is, and that's what the legislators then take and go with. So I think I was predicting it was gonna be 3.8, and then it looked like it might be 3.6 in January, but you didn't know exactly. And when February came around, it's 3.7. So I'll probably know in January within a 0.1
Great.
of what it's going to be.
So you can put that right into your budget as you start it for the next year.
Right from the very beginning, yes, we can be really close.
Thanks, Mike. I've got a couple of questions. First one's probably for Dr. Irish. The $300,000 that we were planning to be able to put back into the fund balance this year that we're not going to, is that settled or is that a worst-case estimate?
It's a worst-case estimate. Part of it, we have one employee out on medical leave. And then, so we were paying that person's salary plus their replacement. So that is a definite
Is that a Washington law or is that a bargained agreement?
Washington law.
Okay.
And then the second scenario is a legal issue. And so I'm not sure yet how that's going to play out, but we're planning for worst-case scenario.
Okay, perfect, thank you. Mike, the $500,000 energy grant, is there any anticipation that that will create any positive offsets for your utility costs and when?
About $16,000, I think, was the positive offset we think we will get. We won't get that for the entire 24-25 school year, because I don't think it'll be installed and kind of operating until early spring, maybe. Might be February.
But at capacity for 25-26, we're only expecting to get
26, I can reduce my utilities by about $15,000, so. It's something.
You mentioned the capital fund, the Island View roof that's getting replaced right now. Awesome. Was that a planned expense?
Yes.
That was something we'd been looking ahead to. Okay. And then are there any anticipated costs out of the capital fund coming this year for any transportation facilities?
Not for this next year.
We're planning, we're still in conversation.
Yeah.
And it will take, so we're not planning to expend any money, no, this year, but we're planning to take action this year on a plan.
Okay.
I have planned, I'll say, is it to spend some money on our capital facilities. So could some of that be used to be spent on planning for the transportation facilities? It could. I may have another higher priority that we need to spend it on instead.
That would potentially be something like a designer or a consultant or something like that at this early stage.
Yeah,
Okay.
like an architect.
Another question about capital projects. You mentioned capital projects being used for new computers.
Yes.
What's the relationship between the tech levy and the capital fund?
Our tech levy goes into the capital projects fund. So, and it's a technology capital levy. So therefore, all the money we collect goes into that fund. And we have set aside, based on what we've told our community when we passed that, how much we're going to spend on technology, which is just over $2 million or so, and what we're spending on the capital side, which is just over $500,000, I believe. And so that grows a little bit each year, right? And, you know, from that, I've got expenditures in the general fund for some staff that it pays for. Therefore, we transfer it out of capital into general fund for those staff type expenditures. And we had to transfer it out to make the lease payments and all the stuff we purchased. But the remaining technology levy portion of the dollars can buy Chromebooks. And that is our plan this next year.
Okay.
Is to purchase Chromebooks.
Got a couple more. Thanks for humoring me. Can
But
we
it's,
get
but it's
slide-
also for the capital outlay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure we all understood that it's not I know you, but for anybody else, it's not a bathtub of money. It was designed
No.
very specifically to have a tranche set aside.
Yeah, and I cannot actually spend it on anything but technology and capital outlay.
Yep. Can you look at slide 21 real quick, please? The bottom bullet, the 600,000 and 25, 26. Actually, no, I apologize. The IPD number of 5.2.
I'm sorry, which slide is it?
Slide 21, 4-year projections.
Oh,
The,
It's the next to last.
yeah, it was
okay, hold on.
there.
Here?
That 5.2% that you are anticipating needing to pay in IPD for 24, 25. Is that how I read that?
Yes, well, what it is really the 3.7% that is the IPD amount and the 1.5% that we negotiated with all of our unions for this particular year. Some of that was budgeted almost 3 years ago.
Okay, so the 3.7 is the state mandate.
Yes.
How much of that state mandate is funded, and how much of that do we absorb? I understand the 1.5 that we
Yeah,
bargained.
yeah.
But how much of the 3.7?
I would have to calculate that for you.
But it's not 100%.
Oh, no. I mean, look at that $2.5 million that we're paying more than what the state's funding us there.
Right.
If you took the, I can probably go back to that really quick.
Well, if I could just maybe
Yeah.
this will get
So
us
if
on
I
the same,
took that
maybe
almost
just get us on
30
the same page real quick. Even
Yeah.
if we negotiated IPD plus 0,
Yes,
they're still getting an increase in pay that is not fully funded by the state and comes out of our levy.
correct.
Perfect, thank you.
It's because though, that percentage is on the, is it because, but we still pay like base salary, like we pay the state salary schedule, so, but we have,
We pay the Anacortes salary schedule.
okay. So that's why the percentage is more.
Schedule is different.
Of the state salary schedule years ago.
They got rid of the state salary
But
schedule.
there's the state like base schedule, what they give. for
Yes.
their- Yeah.
And so right there, you look at it and say, okay, they're going to, give us, let's just make it up, 2% more on the 12,871,000, right? So 2% more. I'm just going to say 12 million, and they're going to give us, because it's 2% more, another 240,000. But if I got 15 million that I'm paying out and I got to pay 2% more, I'm going to pay 300,000. So in my unlikely scenario, we're going to have to come up with the additional $60,000. I made very basic, simple math on that one and used a low percentage, but you kind of get it.
But is
that-
my understanding accurate, though, that in your example with the 5.2, setting aside what we negotiated,
Yes,
the 3.7 is what the state mandates,
yes,
but that is not 100% funded by the state.
that's correct.
And that means that it comes out of our local levy funds.
Yes,
So even if at a bargaining table, we negotiated IPD plus 0, there's still a recognized increase in pay without a corresponding increase in revenue from the state.
correct.
Thank you.
This is one of the flaws, in my opinion, of the state's prototypical school funding model.
Oh, I just needed you to explain it to a 5-year-old so I could understand it, so thank you.
No, this is one of their flaws. That's why what happened was when they moved to this model, they went, okay, statewide, here's what the average teacher makes. As a matter of fact, they did it for all the positions. They're like, this is what the average makes. So we're going to give the average to everybody. So some school districts out there that were below average on their mix factor of teachers, they had newer, younger teachers, they did great. They're like, this is great, we're getting a lot more money. And those districts that had very experienced level staff, it didn't work out for them.
And then last question, I promise. Looking at your last slide, the 4-year projections. Looking at the projected fund balances at the beginning of 24-25, 1.25. And then the largest jump is between 24-25 and 25-26,
Yes,
just on absolute and percentage-wise. And then we still don't get to 4, and I understand that it's a target, not a requirement anymore, but we still don't get to 4 within the 4 years. I guess the question is probably more for Justin. What protections do we have in place if, heaven forbid, another teacher comes down next week with an awful diagnosis that requires a medical leave or another legal issue that comes up? What protections do we have? Because we're playing without a net.
I agree. We're looking right now, and it's taking some time to pull data together, but we're trying to we're looking into an insurance plan that will help cover substitute costs in case we have another teacher take a health leave or unexpected leaves that we can't cover.
Right.
A lot of districts on the East Coast have an insurance plan for that. It's very new concept on the West Coast. So we're looking into that now, and that's hopefully that's our plan, because I don't, the struggle that we have is at a 1.25% fund balance. We don't have a net.
Yeah, and my concern is there is the possibility for very real and completely understandable, like the ones that you're dealing with now, unplanned expenses, but they're just that, they're unplanned.
Yep.
And I am concerned that we are looking at a horizon where this 4-year, it was a 2-year, then it was a 4-year, becomes a 6 or 8-year plan, because every year there's a little something more.
Yep.
And we never get back to where we're actually fiscally solid.
Yep.
That's a concern that I have looking at this table.
Yep, I do as well. I share that concern with you.
And I just want to name too that like we've in not the too recent past been in a position where we've been charged with having to make mid-year cuts. So that's also something that would be really hard to do, because it feels like we've cut as much as we possibly can at this point without doing something different. But
Yep.
if something like that happened, we would maybe be in that situation as well, having to find something in the middle of the year.
Yeah. We're going to go through a very similar process that we've gone through the last 2 years as we make reductions again for next year, and go through that plus minus sheet. And we're actually starting to identify areas that we could potentially reduce, starting when we just started those conversations now for next school year.
Yeah, just generally speaking, to build upon Jenny's comment, I mean, you guys have, for my opinion only, you guys have done an incredible job cutting as far away from the classroom as you could for as long as you could. What this tells me is that we're at the point, though, where there's a Band-Aid that needs to get pulled off, and the sooner you pull it off, the sooner we can start navigating beyond it. Because getting back to whole with respect to the fund balance is really, really important for the reasons we just mentioned. And I don't think that we can continue to pick around the edges on that.
Agreed. And as we go into our next meeting and go into a closed meeting, we'll have conversations about bargaining, and you'll give us some parameters on what we can spend and not spend. And that will be helpful as we create those boundaries of what we are able to offer at the table or not offer at the table.
Yeah, and I want to be just clarifying, the insurance we're looking to get is insurance for when an employee goes out on leave. So it's not all substitute costs, right? Because we may actually hire a leave replacement teacher that gets the full salary of a teacher, right, while they're gone, because they're going to be gone long enough that that's what it covers. And that may be the type of insurance coverage we may be looking for, is the people that are on long-term leave. And the way it works, my understanding is the company kind of looks at, all right, what's our average kind of been? Because they're going to make some money some years, but they're going to lose money in other years. Their goal is a long-term, this is what it's going to be type of thing. And it helps us budget and plan for it accordingly. Because if I know my plan's $150,000 a year, and we did plan for some absences this next year, some, leaves, just some unexpected ones beyond what we'd even planned for show up. You see what I mean? That's kind of what the insurance is for. The insurance can sit there and say, because I can budget and say, all right, let's plan 1.5 or 2 people gone each year that we're going to have to cover an extra person for. But when the third one shows up and that cost is $180,000, that's problematic for us. Even though it's going to be great the year that I only have one gone, right? So their goal is to smooth that out for us, make it so we know what to budget each year, regardless of what those
It
costs
helps us be more
really end up
strategic
being.
in our planning.
Yeah. So I don't know yet if it's going to be feasible. I don't know what their rates are going to be, but we're working to gather the data to provide for them so that they can kind of say, well, this is what it would look like.
Yeah, and it may not be cost prohibitive to even do it.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to
Don't
be
know.
a database decision,
Exactly.
right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But other districts have started moving to it, like you said, more back east, not as many over here yet. But I think as this, it's definitely something worth considering.
Great. Other questions on that? I know you've got a couple of other things to go through with us, but. Okay,
All right.
keep going.
Well, then I need to make sure that there's no questions from the audience on
Oh.
anything, really.
So are we moving to the hearing, or were you going to speak to
This,
the budget summary and the F-195? Those were just for our,
Yeah, that's the,
those are just for our FYI.
that's like the budget document, which is about 200 pages,
Yeah,
right,
the F,
Nikki?
the F-195.
I don't
Yeah.
go through the
No,
F-195 page by
Yeah.
page and talk
Yeah.
about it. And I do create that budget summary sheet, which
Yeah.
pulls really some key pages out of the F-195 to bring them together to make them easier to view. But it's not something I go through in detail at this meeting.
Yep.
But I provide it so that people can have that as a summary type of way to look at our budget. And then I give this overview as the presentation for this. So if there's anything in the F-195 itself or in those summary pages that you've looked at and have questions on, now is the time to ask those questions as
The
well.
summary was easier to look at.
Great.
And I appreciate the summary. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Are there questions? Any other questions? No. Okay, so Nikki has let me know that I need to read this. And so the public hearing is now open for public comments. And I believe people had to sign up for them. And we had nobody sign up for public comments in the budget hearing. So we will, hearing none, close the public hearing. So sorry? Oh, I have to open with the gavel, sorry. This is really official. Okay, so, wait, there we go. The public hearing is now open for public comments. And there is nobody who signed up to speak. And so, having none, the public hearing is now closed, and we will move to agenda item 8.
All right.
So agenda item 8 is superintendent and assistant superintendent comments.
So we are in full motion and opening up the school year. We are in the process of enrolling our students and creating student placements. Our principals, our elementary principals, are in fact meeting today, looking at student placements and making those decisions. And we're continuing to monitor enrollment. We're also in the process of goal setting and planning for this school year based on the strategic plan, and designing professional development and goal setting sessions and action plan setting sections with our principals and district leaders this coming week. So all week next week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we are in meetings with district leaders and principals. And in that process, we are revising our annual operating plan, which we'll bring to the board at our retreat. We are looking at their school improvement plans and then department action plans and building out those goals. We are designing professional development for our team, specifically focusing on data gathering and analysis and action plans, and making data-informed decisions that are at the street level or at the leading data level, which is a needed work in our system. And we did some work on that last spring around leading data versus lagging data and building that out. We'll bring some of that information to you. I'm going to be very strategic in bringing a lot more lagging data sources to you at the retreat, so you'll have an opportunity to look at those lagging data sources. And then we're continuing to work on principal leadership connected to the AWSP framework around their leadership actions and how those leadership actions make a difference in their planning and professional development and data analysis throughout the year. We'll spend some time on student discipline and improving our practices and creating coherence around student discipline and continue that work that we started years ago. We'll be focusing on the teacher evaluation process, which is new this year. The state created new guidelines around student growth goals. So we're training our principals on that change so that they can then in turn work with their teachers on what is expected within their evaluation process. We're also focusing quite a bit on engagement, student engagement, and what that looks like within the classroom, and how principals and teachers are working collectively in their PLCs to help create rich, engaging classrooms, as well as how we are using technology to increase engagement in the classroom, or not using technology. And then we're going to continue to focus on PLCs. As you know, PLCs have been driven by teacher leaders in the past, and we are moving more due to budget cuts to principals leading and guiding those PLCs. So that takes some professional development in helping support our principals in that change in their practice, and providing that rich support for teachers as we move forward. So we're Becky and I, and we have a principal leadership team that's been giving us guidance as and poking holes in our thinking as we're developing this professional development for them. And we'll be implementing that next week, and then we'll be sharing the outcomes of that work at our retreat in August.
Thank you. Dr. Clifford?
I want to first, you'll get an update in the next board. We always give you a report on summer programming, and our summer programming went really well this year, both at the elementary level and secondary level. So you'll have a detailed report on that. We did have one graduate this summer, so that was a exciting, very exciting celebration. I just want to take a moment because you heard some really detailed and challenging, again, another challenging upcoming years. And I just want to recognize everybody on cabinet and Mike and his team. The first year Mike came on, he had to update all the codes and make sure that they were aligned to the state. And then we just needed to make sure that the staffing were assigned to the right budgets and that's huge. Staffing is 86% of our cost. And now, Mike, we have been able to go specifically line by line, and really this year, as we're trying to hone in on the non-staffing budget components, really trying to make sure that we are explicitly documenting and building every single aspect of those budgets so that we know every single rock, nook, cranny component of our budget, so that we can plan for or determine what we need to, where and what we need to shift and adjust. And that it takes hours to do that, and that was a big part of July in between vacations, which people most did a lot of working remote during their vacations. But so I think everybody on cabinet has been able to have an opportunity to do that, and like Mike said about the other pieces, the sick leave and so really trying to hone in and make sure that we have everything really clearly documented. And he's taking a lot of time also to work on Aliview to make sure that that's really clean. This doesn't happen in isolation, and Connie has to work really closely with him. His team has to work really closely. We've been able to do work on our teaching and learning budget, and Kristen and he have been working really diligently on the special ed budget. And so we're not in a final project, and Justin has been heading the ship the whole entire way and making sure that we're kind of really steering us, making sure that we're being diligent. And I just want you to know that we don't take this lightly, and the work is happening in the midst of also trying to make sure that we are doing really good, focused work on the work that we need to be doing. And all of the work that Justin shared. So I just wanted you to have that context, because July was very heavy on budget, and normally we would do that earlier, but the focus time that was necessary had to happen in July, and it's not done, and this is going to take a bit of time. But we've made a lot of progress. So thank you for sticking through it, Mike, and your work with that. And the rest of the team, and Justin for your diligent leadership on that. As we've been prepping for the new school year, I'm going to talk first about the things that Justin has shared and build on that, and then also kind of address some of the mental health and pieces that we're kind of working on in that area. Next week is Leadership Week. I'm not going to say anything more. Justin hit that really well. I'm really excited about the work that we're doing. I'm excited about the leadership team that Justin pulled together. And actually, it's really fun it is really fun for Justin and I to get to work together, because we haven't been able to partner in this way. So it's actually been quite a joy in the midst of really difficult things. And so I'm looking forward to that work, and it's not just a one-time, but this is launching in, and we're working throughout what the year looks like, and Justin has created a really good foundation for that. We have the following week, then we have staff training. So we have our new certificated staff orientation. I think we have over 20 new certificated staff. A high number of that is special ed. And we have about 5 to 6 other staff members. So we're looking forward to bringing them in. We don't have a lot of dedicated time for curriculum adoption, but we do have a few days that we're doing a little bit of curriculum adoption because staff needed a little bit more than what we were able to offer at the end of the year on those adoptions that you voted on at the end of the year. So we want to make sure that we're going in and being successful with those staff and students in that curriculum. And then students, we have the startups the following week and staff return the following week. So the next 3 weeks we're running. And so I'm really excited. I can't wait for our students to return and our staff to return. So it's exciting, and it's coming fast. In the middle of that, we've also been making sure that our grants and all of the other details that need to be in place. I appreciated our speaker sharing that there was a concern about a transition in our mental health. More specific details will be coming, but I'm really excited about our expanded partnership. Island Health, Justin and I, and Northwest ESD had a great conversation. Yesterday was a more specific conversation, but we've had conversations all throughout June and July about what our secondary mental health program is, and we're going to have this trio between the Northwest ESD and the behavioral health that has been supporting our elementary program, Island Health, and the ESD, so that we can make sure that we have some sustainability in our secondary programs. Island Health has been amazing in providing our mental health therapist, and it's been one person or 2 therapists, and they are not connected to the school setting, and they're in the clinic, and they don't have a cohort of people. So this is going to be able to create a really nice nested support system for sustainability. We're going to be in the process of hiring, and in the meantime, we have a plan for interim supports. And Island Health has very specific plans around that. And I just want to recognize Island Health, Anacortes Psych and Wellness, our social worker / district Vinto district liaison at the Family Center. And some others who jumped in and came to support our students in our community during our recent loss at Anacortes High School. And this mental health position has been really important. It's really important anyways, and we've been taking extra care, and that's why we've been having these conversations and had the specific meeting yesterday. To really make sure that we are supporting our students. So we've got these providers that are coming together and making sure that we have some sustainability. We also are having plans, a meeting with our high school team next week, so that we make sure that we have some ports, and we're planning for the launch of the school and return to school for students. And we have specific students who definitely needed support, got support. And we are checking in, the team has been checking in and calling anybody that they think that they're aware of or have students of concern. And so we've been working with and making sure that we have some playbooks and resources to make sure that we're on top of that. That's speaking to the high school. We also want to make sure that we're supporting the middle school. It will look a little bit different, but that's going to be next in our work. So I just wanted you to know that work is happening there. Finally, our RFP, we were going to bring the contract today. The contract is almost done, but we are wordsmithing, and we just didn't want to bring something that is still not completely done being finalized. So our goal is it will definitely be here for August 22nd, and we're very close. So Sorry, that was a lot, but I wanted to make sure you were updated.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we have board comments. So board, does anyone on the board have comments?
Thanks, Dr. Clifford. I just want to thank you for mentioning your second last topic there. It's important for us to recognize and name Austin part of our community, part of our family. And I appreciate the work that will continue. I think that's probably the more important work, the work that will continue to provide support for those young people and their families. So thank you for that effort. I also want to thank Dr. Dewey, Ms. Dunan, Coach Ports, and all the other teachers and faculty and administrative staff that were able to make it to the celebration of life at Rice. It was moving, and it was really good to see the community come together, unfortunately, for that purpose. Complete shift of topic. Thank you very much also for mentioning the ongoing work you have going next week. I look forward to hearing from you guys about what you took from the technology town hall that we had and the ongoing conversations I know you're having with community members. I look forward to seeing how that distills into a plan that we get to hear about on the 23rd. So thank you.
Other comments?
I had the opportunity to see summer impact at the elementary school from the inside out. It's chaos and it's beautiful all at the same time. And this is my third year in being a part of Summer Impact, and I'm grateful to have that opportunity. And by far, this was the most engaged group of teachers and paraeducators that I've seen at Summer Impact. And the way they connected in a really short amount of time with the students was amazing. And I just met some of my favorite people in the course of teaching art to little kids for 4 weeks. And I just was really, really proud of those teachers and how they were connecting with kids. It was beautiful.
Thank you. Other board comments?
I'll just mostly second what Jack said about the memorial, but I wanted to also thank Saba and just, again, all of our district representatives and partnerships that were there to be there for the students. And in all of this and all the work that we're doing, of course, I'm going to continue to be asking. So thank you for telling us about the continuation of those services for our students, because even though we're in the business of education, we have to make sure that they're taken care of and safe, and appreciate all the work that went into that, and even when it's the worst thing. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. So we are moving, we have no new business, and so we just have consent agenda this evening. I actually just, in the spirit of transparency, since we've been talking a lot about budget and there's some travel on here, thought it might be helpful if we named the funding sources for the travel that's on the consent agenda. So I don't know if anyone can answer that.
Go for it.
I love the fact that you
Okay. Camp or Kyla. So I can speak to the ones that I can. So Camp or Kyla, that is covered by an outdoor grant. I'm going to let you take the second one.
The athletics and overnight activity travel for 24-25 is really, I'll say, athletics are local levy dollars that pay for athletics. There may be some in there also that's paid for by ASB. So it's a combination of those two things, but that's the source of funds for that one.
Okay, thank you. That's what I was wondering, because I know that there's opportunities for businesses to donate and things like that. So that goes to ASB, and some of that might be covering this as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
and some of the student fees we collect for athletics will help
Right.
pay for some of this as well, right? So yes, and the Camp or Kyla thing is a state outdoor school grant.
Great. Any other questions or comments before we vote on the consent agenda?
I'd be remiss if I didn't add that there's also a nice Rotary grant supporting Camp or Kyla. Community partnership.
Good point, and I know last year we even charged a fee to the students. I don't know if the fee will be as needed this next year or not, with some of the funding that we've gotten and donations that we've gotten towards that as well.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. It's helpful to be transparent about especially super happy that kids still get these opportunities given our budget circumstances. but thought it would be helpful to be transparent about the funding. All right, so is there a motion to approve the consent agenda this evening?
Move to approve consent agenda items A3.
Thanks, Jack. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Meredith. All those in favor?
Aye.
Great. So board calendar, we have our a regular study session and evening business meeting on the 22nd, where we will vote on the budget and have a regular business meeting. And then the day after, we will have our board retreat. Are you questioning that? Is there a study session?
We don't have a study session.
Yeah, I didn't think so either. I know, when I was saying it, I was like, wait.
Yeah,
We don't have a study session the day before our board retreat.
Yes, no
Okay.
plan for a study
So
session, so we can take that off.
evening, we'll just strike that. Evening business meeting at 6:15. It'll be a regular business meeting with the voting on the budget, and then our full day board retreat on the 23rd. So, and with that, I think we're finished. I will adjourn us.
Thank you.